Hello and welcome to the Patient Educators Update, where we talk about patient education in a clinical environment. I'm Chuck Jones with Synergy Broadcast, and I want to welcome our guest, Fran London. Hi, Fran.
Hi, Chuck.
Fran is the patient education specialist at Phoenix Children's Hospital in Phoenix, Arizona, and she is also the author of the book, No Time to Teach. This is the book that we use for a majority of our episodes. Fran wrote this book a couple of years back, and it was voted the 2010 Book of the Year by the American Journal of Nursing, correct? Did I get that right?
Yes.
Okay, I say it often enough, and then I forget if I'm saying it right or not. But the book is, it's a little compact paperback, and it has some very practical advice on what patient educators should be doing. And normally it's our source of topics, but we've been looking at articles that are recently published, so they're very contemporary, and responding to those articles as to whether or not we think they're a good thing or not so good. And Fran, this week we have an article that talks about innovation. Specifically, it says how healthcare innovation leaders turn ideas into change. And one of the folks quoted in the article says that innovation is more about cultural change and implementation than the technology or the invention itself. And my example reference for that would be the app that you guys created for residents called Simply Saying. That's an app that allows them to look up and learn ways to simplify medical jargon for patients, because you're at a children's hospital and the children don't want to hear the big words, and many times the parents don't want to hear that either. So this is an app that helps the residents communicate better. But the app itself does no good. The invention does no good if there's not proper implementation and cultural change, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so one of the things that she says here is innovation is taking ideas and turning them into change that accelerates transformation in healthcare, and I'm hoping she means improvement in that transformation. And I want to relate this to something that you've said a couple of times, and that is that often what we provide to patients as patient educators is not in fact what they are looking for. So would you care to expand on that and talk about innovation and how it all relates?
Well, I think that's part of what people are getting at when they're promoting patient-centered care and family-centered care, because we're doing what we think they need or what we know, and not asking them what it is that they want to know or what they need to know in order to function. And I think a good example of using this, an innovator in this field, is Kate Lorig at Stanford, who has created a research program around innovative patient education programs that are designed with patients with those illnesses. So they actually interview them and find out what it is they want to know and create a program around providing the information that they really are interested in.
Yeah, they have a pretty extensive process. I think their first one was about arthritis, but it takes them quite a while to go through and do the evaluations and the testing before they'll actually release a program. And once they release it, then they become fairly broadly used.
Yes,
Yeah,
and they're in other languages also.
Yeah.
Spanish especially. Yeah.
And we'll post a link in the show notes, but it's at patienteducation.stanford.edu/programs, and we'll put some more in there. But let's go back to involving the patient and kind of knowing what they want, because this also ties into your other mantra, which is assessment.
Yeah, yeah. Well, some of that, I mean, one example that I think of in pediatrics is we have some patients who are chronically ill, who have a lot of medical equipment, oxygen or ventilators or pumps of some sort. And we think about, making sure the family can use the equipment correctly with the child, but then we send them home and they don't even know how to get the stuff in the car so that it doesn't bounce around and still have the kid connected correctly. So, I mean, there are a lot of things that parents and patients want to know that we just don't address.
Yeah, and part of that is kind of problematic in the beginning because the parents may not know what questions to ask, and they may not be thinking through, well, I've got to put all this stuff in the car, I've got to make sure it's worked and hooked up, then I got to get it out and get it in the house and all this other stuff. And so there's it's difficult to think that through. So in some cases, maybe the only way to find out is to literally do a ride along and look at some of the problems. It's kind of like the TV doctor that goes to the home. Well, they would never really do that, but they're searching through the medicine chest and they're doing all this stuff. But they're getting to the core of what's going on.
Well, another way to do it is to just find populations of patients with those issues and ask them, what is it they wish that we had told them?
Wow,
what is it they had to discover on their own? What is it they share among each other in support groups? That's the information we need to know.
Yeah, and that's a pretty clever approach to it. Let's just grab a few, they're patients in the hospital or they're people that we know because we've treated them. Let's get them together and chat with them. And it doesn't have to be in a group. You could talk to them on the phone. You could Skype with them. You could do whatever you can do to reach out and try to find out what's on their mind, what is troubling them, what worries them, what do they feel good about, what have they learned that might help you convey to other patients that would help them.
It's pretty simple, but we don't always do it, but it's quite innovative.
Yeah, it really is. Is there any particular advice you would have for somebody that's thinking about this? They're thinking, well, innovation and change, and maybe we should form a committee. It doesn't have to be that complicated, does it?
It doesn't. Basically, you have to think about what the problem is that you're trying to solve, and then directly address it instead of, you could run it by a committee before you implement it if you're concerned that you won't get buy-in. But certainly just asking people what they want is direct enough.
Yeah, and oftentimes in the business world, we will ask somebody that we're talking to what their expectations might be at a specific step. What do you expect to happen with the next step? What do you expect to happen maybe after an installation or after training, things of that nature? And I will tell you that many times the answers that we get back are not what we expect for them to expect. And so it's always a good idea. I don't like to assume anything because very often I'm wrong because I'm looking at it from my side, thinking I'm looking at it through their eyes, and you can't always do that and be right.
And that happens a lot in healthcare. A lot of patients come to a surgery expecting to walk out of there cured, not recognizing that there's a long recovery process and some rehab involved.
Yeah, I'm married to a person like that.
Fix me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, she. I can relate to several times that she's had procedures, and she said, "I just can't wait to wake up and feel better." And I'm thinking, no, you're not going to feel better when you wake up. You're going to have to give it some time. And she's always disappointed when she wakes up in pain.
It's the expectation. You got to fix those expectations.
Yeah, you really do. You really do. Well, this is actually I'm going to go back to a couple of episodes ago where we talked about overthinking it. This is part of the overthinking process that if we spend time talking about innovation and creativity and get all this new stuff to do to patients, that if we're not doing the simple stuff like assessing and asking them about their expectations, asking them, I'll relate back to one of the examples in your book where this young girl kept coming back because of skin lesions, and when you dug down into it, you found out that she's in a wheelchair, which you already knew, but you found out the doorways in her homes were too small for the wheelchair, so she was having to drag herself across the floor, which created the skin lesions.
Yeah.
And so that's one of those things where you have to ask, you have to dig, you have to get involved, you have to personalize it.
And it's simple, but it's hard to remember. You think it takes time, but it solves the problem. I mean, she knew the answer in that situation. She just didn't tell us because we didn't ask her.
Yeah, yeah, and so often is that, well, why didn't you tell me? Well, you didn't ask. I didn't think it was relevant. So it's interesting. So if we title our show today, "Turning Ideas into Change," one of the first steps has to be involving the patient to find out what they want, to find out if the idea and the change you're talking about is going to be relevant and how it affects them. Because it can sound great on paper and sound great in a committee meeting, but the practical application can not work or produce some unintended consequences, which could be very different than what you want the outcome to be. So if we could boil this down into a couple of different things, we would say assessment is still the most important thing you do. And make sure that you're asking questions perhaps about expectations and what the patient thinks they need to know. And if you're not sure, try asking some patients that maybe you're not in the hospital today, but maybe have been home and worked with some of the equipment or some of the problems of after discharge, and get some feedback from them. It's much like the survey that, you bought the new TV and Best Buy calls you and says, hey, how's your new TV? It says, well, I can't figure out how to change a channel,
Right.
and so they can help you.
Once again, a great summary. Yeah.
Well, it just, it just makes so much sense to me that a lot of this is overthinking. And if we get down to the basics and we get involved and do the assessments, you learn so much, and then you can apply that so that you never can say you have no time to teach, because it's right there before you and you don't have to do anything special.
You're not wasting time doing other things that aren't productive.
Yeah, that's correct. Okay, great topic. Excellent. Well, why don't you tell folks how they can find you?
Oh, I have a blog at www.notimetoteach, and I'm on Twitter at notimetoteach.
Okay, and your book can be bought wherever fine books are sold, certainly on Amazon and other ebook resellers. It's available in a paperback as well as a ebook download. And for those of you that might want to use Fran's book for in-service and group training, if you contact our publisher, Pritchett and Hull, it's p-h.com. They will give you a nice discount on a bulk purchase so that you can use it in group stuff. And it's a small paperback. It's easy to carry with you, and certainly recommend that. And for those of you that are watching in hospitals that would like to incorporate video as one of your tools and video on demand, you can contact us at synergybroadcast.com. And you can also look us up on the internet at MMDS, or Medical Media Delivery System. You can Google that and find us. So Fran, thanks so much for your time today. It was a great discussion, and we'll post the links to these articles, not only the article that originated the concept, but also the one for Stanford, so folks can go check that out too. So thanks very much.
Thanks, Chuck. Bye.
Bye-bye.